Hello, welcome back to Her Shift. This is the space where we heal and we shift and we thrive. Maybe not in that order. This is where we can change our beliefs, do the work, and just have a goddamn happier, healthy, better life. And who wouldn't want that? I'm your host, Anna. And I've just got back from a makeup job. It is prom season. I still do the occasion makeup. I don't do a lot of prom makeup. Hundreds of reasons why. I'm sure you could hazard a guess. But if I know the people and I know they like my style, I'm happy to do it. And I also did a few makeup jobs in the past month, and I'm going to be honest here and I'm going to tell you guys that I am edging towards maybe the R word, maybe retirement. I'm just having this alignment in that, not retirement from anything else, but just from like the makeup work. It's taking up a tab in my brain that I don't think I have download space for right now. And yeah, it's becoming a bit of a shifting moment. And you're thinking, why am I discussing it? Why am I talking it out loud here? Well, with the theme of today's episode, which is all about the spoken word and the impact that can have on us. And of course, why we shouldn't take anything personally, even compliments, and I'm going to discuss why. So, what if I told you that the most pain you carry doesn't come from what is done to you by others, but what was said to you? Or worse, what you said to yourself. So I am starting a new book at the minute, and this is part of my reason why I would really like to turn these type of episodes into the book club, the transformation club that is the room, and I would do regular episodes on as we work through a book. And I'm reading a book called The 4 Agreements. And I like to intuitively find books, and by that I mean if I hear a book mentioned or I get a nudge or I see something online, I will straight away see if it's available on Audible. I will then put it on my wish list. If that is mentioned again, or maybe even 3 or 4 times, I then go, right, I have to listen to this. This is something that I put on my wish list such a long time ago, and I received an email. I couldn't even remember that I'd done it. And I received an email from Audible saying, oh, it's on sale at the minute, this particular title. So I went, oh, right, there's a nudge from the universe, and downloaded it. And it's based on 4 principles that if we follow and implement, we can just have freedom. We can have freedom and happiness and, I don't know, pure contentment when we turn into a big ball of light. Maybe. So it's certainly not a famous or well-known book that it's not up there like with the Mel Robbins types at the minute, but I'm already a little bit shook off, a little bit mind blown, and I thought I would share some of these core themes with you right now. So, and obviously the point of this episode is just to say this is like a huge shift, a perspective that I'm going through right now. And I like to share that with you guys here on Her Shift, so then you can maybe take it away, implement it into your own life, into your own healing, take what from you will. So, firstly, we have words, and have we ever considered that words are spells? So we're talking about the spoken word and the written word. Obviously, we do have power with the thoughts in our head, for those that have an internal monologue. Mine's still blown that not everyone does, but I certainly have an internal monologue. Now, that does have power, that what manifests outside our heads, of course. But I want us to think for a second about how strong the spoken and the written word is. So first of all, you got the word spelling. We do spelling. We are casting spells out there. That's where the word spelling comes from. And I want you to think that sometimes just one word can have the hugest, the biggest impact ever. It can change the course of history. It can be a duff on EastEnders. It can change an entire relationship in a second. Think about how strong a word, a sentence, how strong it can be. It has such a strong effect on us, doesn't it? What is spoken to us. And it really started me thinking, and in this book they've used examples, so just from World War II and with Hitler, and thinking how he wasn't from what I know, he wasn't like he didn't partake in the war, as in he wasn't a soldier. It was like a physical action. He spoke. He spoke to people with fear and propaganda. If you've ever, I recently listened to actually some of his speeches. I'd never thought about it before. I'd always seen him stood there in black and white shouting and seemed quite aggressively at his audience in German. And recently I've listened to some of them in English, and strangely enough, there isn't actually the word hate in there. What he does is he does cast fear and doubt, and he makes a point of saying, if we don't do this, this is going to happen to our people. That's how he gets people on side. He spouts fear. And fear is one of the most powerful things out there. It's the thing that controls us, and throughout our healing journey, the thing that we always come back to with our whys, it comes from fear. Always fear. And you think how strong and powerful is the spoken or written word, that it can cause such fear in us. Equally, it can be so powerful if we use it for love. I want us to remember that. However, if you're in a state of fear caused by words and what someone has said to you, it is very hard to flip it and go into a state of love. And I think all of us can completely understand that. I then thought about something less heavier than World War II. And I was thinking about soap operas and EastEnders, and how obviously they move very fast and there's always something happening, and it's always gossip, fear-mongering. He said, she said, this happened. It's a text, it's an email, it's a what's the classic line? You can't tell me what to do, you ain't my mother. Yes, I am. And it's like, yes, I am. That just changes the whole plot line forever. If you think about when relationships break down, sometimes amongst all the arguments and the shouting and the screaming, maybe it was just a few words or a few sentences that had the most devastating impact. And then I think back about my own background as well, and how I've been shaped by the world around me, and how we as children obviously are shaped by what our parents or the people that are bringing us up believe. That's a lens, that's a very powerful lens. What society constructs around us. There are laws of the land that are put on us, and we are told this is right and this is wrong and this is moral and this is not. And me, certainly, when I'm thinking about growing up, when you're a child, when you start to develop your autonomy, which is pretty early on, and we either, so before we can communicate, we will shake our heads or refuse something, or show our displeasure and get upset. And as we get older, we use the word no a lot. Now, for me personally, growing up in my situation with Narky, no wasn't a word. In fact, it was often said to me, we don't say no. You do not say no to me. That was said frequently. And there does come a point with a child where they eventually will conform. They will go along with. It's unlikely that they've made that decision themselves based on their own morality. It's just a case of, well, life is easier if I eat my vegetables. Yeah? But perhaps in my case, it was more of a case that it was literally just beaten out of me. There was just no point arguing. There was no point saying no. And now I start to think back that I have always spoken very badly about myself in my own head. I've been extremely self-critical in the past. I've spoken about it on here. Why do we talk to ourselves like shit? I think that was one of the episodes that we did. Why do we speak so negatively about ourselves? And the way we speak to ourselves, would you say that to someone you knew, someone you loved? Would you say that to your child? Absolutely not. But for some reason, we do it to ourselves. Now, where has that behaviour been learned? And I'm sure we can all think back to our upbringing our teens and onwards about maybe just one sentence or one thing said by one person one time that we have carried with us forever. We've made it a thing. And sometimes we're not even aware of it. And that's the sad thing. And I'm going to use a real example here. So in terms of like how I view myself and how I thought about myself, and I just thought I was a really, really, really terrible person. I didn't know why I was, but I'd been told I was, so therefore I believed it. And I'd been told that by people that were very close to me, so I thought it must be true. And of course your brain tries to fill in all the gaps, okay? So therefore, whenever I would get something wrong, I would make a mistake, to me that would be proof that I really am, you know, this terrible person. And it's interesting that, so when I was working certainly full-time in makeup, I had much more regular clients, and I would take part in awards and things like that. A lot of the time, people were asked to do reviews on you, on your whole business, how you conducted yourself, how you were as a person, how you made people feel. And a lot of the times after the awards, whether you won or not, you were often then given these reviews and the judges' comments to read over. And it's interesting that I would read what we would say were really positive, really glowing reviews, and not just about the makeup itself, but about me as a person and how I made people feel. And I remember one thing was I was always mentioned that I was very kind and I was very patient. And I remember that would be something that I would gloss over very, very quickly. I would also never read these reviews out or share them with anybody, which I think is quite telling. And I know that with my colleagues, they would say, well, when I was going through these later, you know, with my husband or my partner, or I was showing my, you know, my mum or my dad later on, and they were obviously really proud of me and they were going through this with me. And I never did that because I didn't think they were true. I don't know what story I put in my head to think, well, why would somebody take the time to write something so nice if it wasn't? But I just, you know, I couldn't put that together. And the word kind and patience, I used to really, really overlook because that had never been put into my existence as I was growing up. I certainly wasn't kind. I was told repeatedly how selfish I was. And in terms of patience, I think most children are always like, come on, be patient, wait it out. Now, because I knew that I used to get a little bit antsy waiting for Christmas, let's say, or, you know, really didn't want to wait until after my dinner to eat chocolate, I was probably told that I didn't have much patience about me. So it was very, very hard for me to believe. And again, it's just one of those weird things, isn't it? Things that we're told about ourselves, our personality, our looks. What do we hold on to? There is, for example, in this book, that a little girl who loves to sing and has got a beautiful singing voice. One time her mum's got a screaming headache and she says, "Will you shut up? That voice is so ugly right now." And in that second, like everything the little girl believes about her voice, how she sounds, the pleasure it gives her, is completely destroyed. It doesn't matter that her mum was in a bad mood, that any sound at that moment, because she had a headache, would have annoyed her, would have sounded ugly. And also the mum, because of the where she's feeling in that moment, doesn't take the time to correct her. She doesn't realise the impact she's had on her daughter in that moment. And then for the rest of her life, the little girl does never sing again. And that was just by one sentence in that one moment. And I know there'll be so many of us that have got that experience about something about us, about we feel, one of our looks, something we don't like about ourselves because of one comment, one time. Now, it's really interesting, isn't it, how we believe clearly what is said to us, how we absorb it, how we try to make it make sense. So if someone tells us we're ugly, we first of all believe it, and second of all, we then look for proof that that is actually true. Which then takes us on to the next idea from what I'm reading, is the idea about taking anything personally and why we do. Now, I explored this a while back when I was, again, writing notes for the room. And it was the idea that if you can't take anything personally, and that's a lot easier said than done because it is just someone's opinion. However, if you're going to go down that line, that means, as per the title of this episode, you also can't take compliments personally as well. First of all, whatever's been said to you, you're going to look through your lens and you're going to view it differently. Somebody could have said something to you well-meaning, it could have been a compliment from them, but you take it completely the wrong way. So it gets lost in context, or perhaps it's a trigger. They might say something backhanded, they might say something snarky, they might say something malicious. Or they might say something that is a genuine compliment that has a positive effect on you. However, that's when it's important for us to remember that even that compliment, and as well meaningful as it is, actually doesn't mean anything if you don't believe it to. It's still just their opinion, it is their perspective. People's views have got nothing to do with you, good, bad, or indifferent. And they completely come from how they feel about themselves. Even if if you go, it can't be that deep. Well, it isn't. A lot of it is subconscious. So I have an example from the other night. So I was at the gym and I saw a woman wearing a really cool swimsuit. So it was like a swimsuit, but it was cut out. So it wasn't quite a bikini. And it was in a really cool colour. And I was like, I really like that. It looks super flattering. So I asked her, I said that is what I think. I said, oh, your swim costume looks amazing. Where did you get it from? I didn't put too much thought into that. And of course, my motives were, I genuinely did think she looked amazing. And also I did want to know where it was from so I could have a look too and maybe get one for myself. And obviously, I'm sure the compliment did make her feel good and she was more than happy to talk about it and where she got it from. But I think what this book, or the idea about not taking things personally, is going, is that it's still just my opinion. I think she looked amazing. I would have liked to look like that. I would like that swimming costume. But that is just my opinion. And that's all it is. It's got nothing to do with that woman whatsoever. It's been shaped from what I think, what I feel, and that is it. It's really also important to remember that if we're trying to implement the idea of not taking things personally, which is so hard, it really is so hard. And I from my past really would take everything, anything that was said to me, good, bad, or indifferent, I would massively read into it. So it was very, very hard for me to detach that. And I think that, I won't just read this book, the 4 Agreements, and go, oh, that's it, job done, sorted. I will no longer take things personally and my healing is going to thrive. It's going to take some doing because of what's the spells that have been cast in my head. But yeah, I think it's really important to realize that the baseline comes from your own self-worth. So what happens is that if you wouldn't be spoken to in a certain way, how you feel about yourself, the way you treat yourself, the things that you say to yourself, if you won't put up with it, you're not going to accept it from anyone else. If you do accept it from someone else, it's because you're willing to tolerate that you will treat yourself like that as well. If that makes sense. So if I've spoken about myself so negatively before, if I've got that personal view of myself and someone else reiterates that, says the same thing, I will take it, because that is where my self-worth is. Now, a good way to gauge self-worth and realise the power that this has over you and how important and crucial it is to everything we do, especially in healing, is to realise this, that everything that we have around us, all the views, all the opinions, all society, religion, everything that's told to us, it is an opinion, it is a view, but it might not necessarily be ours. And in fact, I would go as far to say that 90% of what we hear, what is said to us, the things that we are brought up on, the things we were taught at school, the things that we hear in church or whatever, aren't actually true. They are just views, they are just opinions. So in the book, it talks about the word impeccable. Now, I'd only use the word impeccable to do with someone's fashion sense, I think, as in they'd be like, oh, impeccably put together. Impeccable. I thought it was something to do with perfect, and it's not. And it actually means without sin. So straight away I'm thinking, right, without sin has obviously got religious connotations and we have to adhere to certain rules. In fact, it's the absolute opposite. Impeccable means without sin, but also from you. So it means that you have to act in alignment with your self-worth. And any time that you do something that you don't fully agree with, that you're not aligned with, that perhaps you're just going along with, every time you do that, you are fracturing something inside, you are affecting your healing, you are causing friction in your soul, and you are hitting your self-worth. It even goes as far to say that if everything you do comes from truth, if everything you do comes from alignment and what you truly believe, not how you're going to come across to others, what might happen to you if you do this and people don't agree with your actions, or if you say something not everyone's on board with, but if you truly act and say and be and do in your true self, you have, lost one of the tightest shackles around human existence. It's that the only morality that matters is in you and your self-worth. So when we're told about the laws of the land, and you think about in religion, it's like, if you do this, or if you say like this, you're going to go to hell. Actually, if you act out of misalignment, if you go against your truth, you are already living in personal hell. And straight away, as I was thinking about this, I applied it to PMDD. I thought, yeah, that is every time that I stuff something down, that I have to conform, that I have to go along with, that I put everyone else's feelings and needs and opinions above mine. That's what causes me the most pain. And no wonder. So basically, I am sinning on myself. And that is the only way sin exists. And I'm not talking about this from a religious point of view, by the way. This is just sin. Sin isn't a religious word. It's just, I mean, I might need to look up the Latin on that as well as impeccable, but that's what it means. It just, like, sin against yourself. So every time we want to do something, but we worry about what other people might say or how they might react. Perhaps we want to stand up for somebody because we think, actually, that's really the right thing to do, but we daren't. Every time we don't do something, or we miss out on something, or we think, oh, I just wish I could do that, we are always acting out of fear. But every time we do that, we're going against our own personal truth. So that's why we speak badly about ourselves. It's what was modelled to us. But it's also, we internalise others' wounds and fears and projections. I know it's very hard to, people say when they say what we consider bad things or negative things to you, bullies, things like that. And you go, they're only jealous. Well, we're not far off with that statement, actually. It might not be jealousy, it might not be envy, but in some form it is a projection. And it does talk about how they feel about themselves. It might not be because that's something that bothers them, so they might make a comment about your appearance, about your weight, and they might be very happy with their body. But the idea is that they want to cause you pain, right? So anyone who wants to hurt someone else is because they are hurt themselves. So it is always a projection. And it also comes from their own wounds and their own fears. Because as humans, safety comes from conformity, not truth. However, if we do that, of course, we are going against our own truth and we will continue to live in our own personal hell. And now at this point you may be thinking, I don't want to know any more about this book and I don't want to read it. And that is absolutely fine. That's the thing with all these. I would like to say a book is a book and it will have different meaning to different people. But this is how I'm interpreting it right now. And I'm really getting into it. I'm also thinking that, if I were to do this book club or this transformation club, that would save everyone else a lot of reading time as well, wouldn't it? So I was thinking as well about how words are built on belief. And they're built on repeated phrases. And we might hear something just once. We might hear a spell spoken into existence just once. But then we repeat it constantly in our heads. This person said this one thing one time to us 20 years ago. But I'm going to repeat it to myself. I'm going to keep it in existence. I'm going to keep it real in my head. And trauma survivors often carry languages that aren't even theirs. If I think about all the things that I was carrying, that I believed were true, so much so that it caused me to lose my entire identity because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked. I think we very much do have our own language. What's acceptable, what's not okay. And you'll often see that trauma survivors, just little word changes, just little nuances in their everyday language. They're subtle, but they can be picked up upon. They are very, very rarely overtly self-praising. And even in saying that, I'm like, well, of course we are, because we don't want to come across as, stuck up or up our own arse, as arrogant or anything like that. But when you think about it, with people that are genuinely happy and content and healed and feeling secure, they can say great things about themselves. They can be confident. They don't come across as arrogant. So it led me to think that if words are so powerful, and if they can destroy a soul, but then they can surely rebuild one too, right? Because just as much as fear is a really powerful connotation, love is just as powerful, if not more so. So what if today you said, I'm rising through the rubble, instead of I'm such a mess? What if when we journaled, we looked at just the tiniest little light, the smallest positive, that anything we could take away from an absolutely shit situation? What is one word in our language today that we could change? I am so guilty of it myself. And because I don't think I use words like hate, so I'm not particularly, well, I don't comment on social media. I don't stick my R in there because, again, it's just my opinion. I can think these things. But I definitely do it every single day. I think I definitely swear more to a cup is half empty than half full. It's that sort of formula, isn't it, to apply to things. So what are little words or little sentences or little things that we do that actually we could reframe or we could reword? So what's the one sentence you heard growing up that still haunts your self-image? And what truth could you replace it with today? Thinking back to what I said at the beginning of this episode, that for me it was, you don't say no to me, and how much fear and how much power and I'd say how much restriction that held over me, and probably still does to this day, simply because of, it's not a case of, well, I can say whatever I want, I can say no to whoever I want to. It's a very scary thing, but how could I change that? What truth could I replace it? And it would simply be, you don't say no to me, and it would be, I can say no to you, to myself, to anybody. That's a human right. I have the power to say no, and I always have done. Even as a child, I had every right to say no. Yes, there could have been consequences. There would have been consequences. Yes, it would have might also affected my safety or something like that. However, it was still within my right and certainly my truth to say no when I wanted to. And that has always been the case. So the fact that I've always believed the opposite is actually been a lie to myself. And I'm going to invite you to share your own sentences, the own things that were said to you, or the sentences that you say to yourself that still have a massive impact on you and your self-image, how it views yourself. What truth could you replace it with? I'd love it if you message me or tag me on Instagram with that. As I finish the 4 agreements, I will of course probably do a little bit more of a summary and a write-up, and I will put it in the show notes, but not yet because I'm not even halfway through. But I would love any suggestions if anyone is, loving books in the self-help space and, self-improvement, self-help, definitely non-fiction. Pass it on. Give me that universe nudge to look at something. I am always loving other people's suggestions. And I'm going to say, as usual, I would love it if you could follow along. I would love it if you could share the Her Shift podcast. And I would love it if you could like and share and download, because that's the only way I can grow this community. In terms of the PMDD stuff that we talk about on here, I have been in talks with someone about forming a support group in the northeast of England. The idea being that eventually there would be throughout the UK. So that's really exciting news, and I will talk more about that as and when it comes. I'm actually off to Dorset tomorrow to go to a workshop, and it is with a psychologist and therapist called Chris Finn. And he comes from the whole, he's done the degree and the masters in psychology, but now he goes a bit more down the spiritual route. Again, it's just, I like to follow people from all different walks in the space and hear their perspective and hear their views. Again, just their views, their perspectives, their opinions. Mustn't take them personally. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's a bit of a drive for me. I think it's over 6 hours to Dorset. I might as well be in France, to be quite honest. And it's also the first time I've had any me time in way over a year. Which, yeah, I'll talk more about that in another episode. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So let's just hope the sun will shine down south. In the meantime, please let me know if there's anything you ever need, if you want to talk, if you want to message me, if you want to hit me up with your PMDD stories and your shifts. I am always willing and ready to talk. Please remember that you are doing amazing. You are stronger than you think. Please do keep going. I do believe in you. And as always, sending all my love.